room today and I'm going to show you how to make a Quillow. And what that is, it's a combination quilt pillow, and right now I have one and it's in the pillow form. And when I gift these, I usually like to add a little stuffy with it. So I'll take him out and I'll show you how it becomes a quilt. And you can see the pocket on the other side. So I'll walk you through this step by step. So let's get started. The supplies that you'll need for this project is your fleece, and you'll need 1.25 yards at least. Then your other fabric, today I'm using a flannel, you'll need at least 1.5 yards. And then you'll need some fabric ribbon, about 24 inches. And you'll see that I've already pre-cut at 32 by 42, my main fabrics. And I'm gonna finish the quilt at 30 by 40, but I just wanted a little extra room so I can trim the quilt down after I'm done. And so the first thing that we're gonna do today is the pocket. So let's start that now. I've cut my fabric for my pocket at 24 inches by 12 inches because I wanted to finish it 12 inches square. I'll just fold it like that and sew it together. And the way I came up with that 12-inch square measurement is I took the width of my quilt, which is 30 inches. I divided it by 3, which is 10, and added 2 inches, which is 12. And then I took the length of the quilt, which is 40 inches, divided by 4, and then again added 2 inches, which is also 12. So that gave me the measurements for my pocket. So the first thing I want to do is just add my embellishment, and this is just fabric ribbon. And I'm going to pin it in place about 1 inch down from the top and the bottom so I don't encroach upon the seam allowance here. I'll repeat that on the other end. First I'll snip it off, leave myself a little bit of extra room here. And this does not have to be exactly 1 inch, it's just, you just don't want to sew over it when you're sewing your pocket together. Snip that off, and I'll take it to the machine and I'm going to sew along the top and along the bottom on each end. Going to snip off the excess fabric. And I'm going to sew my pocket together. Going to fold it in half. I'm going to sew all the way around. Right sides are together. And I'm going to use my 3/8 inch presser foot, and I'm going to leave about a 3-inch gap over here for turning. I've marked with 2 pins where I want to stop sewing. Just going to put a pin up here in the corner. So what I'm going to do is start about right here, sew to my fold, and then I'm going to remove it from the machine, and I'm going to sew starting here at this bottom fold and continue around till I get to my double pins. Poke out my corners with my hand. The next thing I'm going to do is top stitch about 1/8 of an inch along the top, just to flatten that out. Now I'm layering the quilt. I'm going to start with my fleece on the bottom. Now this quilt has no batting, it's just the fleece and the top layer, which today is the flannel. And I try to cut them exact, but they won't be because of the way the fleece tends to pull out of shape. But again, I did overcut it a little bit, so I have a little wiggle room. Okay, now I'm going to make some marks for my quilting lines. And the first thing I'm going to do, I've decided, you can quilt however you want to quilt it, but what I've decided for today is I'm going to quilt down the center, just straight line quilting. And then I'm going to do 2 lines on either side 5 inches apart. So to find my center, I'm just going to fold it in half. Does not have to be exact. And I'm going to use this little roller here. And I'm going to roll it to make a crease. And I'm hoping when I unfold it, I'll be able to see my crease. Let's see if it worked. Yeah. Now I am going to quilt exactly on that line, and I'm going to just put a few dots. I'm using this, which I've used before, this disappearing ink pen. And I'm just going to put a few dots in case I can't see my crease very well when I'm quilting. And then what I've decided to do, I'm going to just quilt another straight line 5 inches on this side. So I have my ruler. I'm just going to place my 5 on the line. Line it up down at the bottom. And again, I'm just going to mark some dots. And you get the idea. So I'm going to keep doing that. Another one more row over here. And then I'm going to repeat the same thing on this side. I'm starting to mark on the other side, and I wanted to show you how I lined it up. So I put my 5-inch marker on the center line of my fold. And I've started to draw my markings on this side, and I decided to do little lines because the dots were driving me too buggy because they looked so much like the fabric markings. And so it should be pretty even, lining up here, here, and on the center mark. And so then I'll just do one more, line it up at the 5. line it up here and here. And then I would align it up with my bottom and continue marking. I finished drawing in my quilting lines, and the last thing I'm going to do before I take it to the sewing machine is I'm just going to put one pin in each corner to hold down the fabric. Now, a lot of times people like to use adhesive sprays to spray the two layers together. And I don't want to do that on this quilt because it is for a baby, and I just don't want to use any kind of adhesive sprays like that. And that's all the pinning I'm going to do. I'll repeat it on the other two corners because this fabric stays together really well, and I just want the ability to really hold it together with my hands and not have a lot of pins in the way. So now I'll take it to the machine. I'm going to begin by quilting down my center line, and all I've done is roll each side in so I have a neater area to work with. And I'm using an all-purpose needle, a 9014, and that handles this fleece pretty well. And I'm using my regular presser foot. This machine, sewing machine, has something called IDT, and what that is, it's kind of an integrated walking foot, so you don't have to have a special walking foot. It's integrated into the sewing machine. So I'm just going to straight line quilt, and I'm going to change my stitch length to 3.5, and here we go. And I'll stay on my quilting lines the best that I can, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. I have my first line sewn, and you can see that I mostly stayed on the line, and I'm just going to continue on that way. There's 3 more lines on either side of the center that I'll finish. And I did want to mention that sometimes I do wear quilting gloves, but for this project I really wanted to be able to feel with my fingertips that the fabric is flat and not bunching up. So I'll continue on with my other quilting, and I'll show it to you at the end. Here's the completed quilting. Here's the front. I'll show you the back. So again, just very simple quilting. If you recall, the quilt is going to finish at 40 by 30. So right now I'm going to trim off an inch on each end of the quilt to make it 40, because now it's 42. So I'm just lining up this 5-inch mark with my quilting line, and then down at the bottom and at the top I'll line the ruler up with this straight edge of the quilt here. And I'm going to take an inch off here. I'm going to repeat the same exact thing on the other end. I have my 1 inch cut off my one end. I'm going to flip the quilt over so my cut edge is to the left of me. And since I have this large cutting mat, I'm going to utilize that. I'm going to line up my cut edge right along here the best that I can. Now I'm going to measure. I want the quilt to be 40 inches, so I'm just going to put my ruler on the 40. And since this isn't long enough, I have another ruler that I'll line up to the 40 here and line my line up here. That looks pretty good. And then I'll just cut right here. Now if you don't have a mat and 2 rulers, you can, in the alternative, use your trusty old tape measure. Measure across to 40. Use a marking pen or a ballpoint pen, anything that you want, and draw your lines. Just draw a cutting line from one end to the other. And that might even be simpler. So now I'll cut it. The width of the quilt I want to measure 30 inches, and because there's no quilting lines that I want to be evenly spaced out, I can just even out this edge, the right edge, and then flip the quilt over and measure it to 30. So I'll do this in a couple of different cuts. So I have it lined up on the ruler line. I'm going to stop and I'm going to pull the quilt close to me so I don't have to reach too far. Line it back up. And I'm just lining up my cut line here. And up here. Looks good, and then just finish my cut. Now I'll flip the quilt over for my last cut. Again, I'll line it up on the edge here. And this time I'll come to the 30. Use my 2 rulers just like I did last time. And cut. I'll have to snip that off at the end. Line it up at the 30. Line it up over here. Looks good. Now I'm just going to snip off this last piece that didn't get cut properly. The next step is to attach the pocket to the back of the quilt, and you can either measure it, put it right at the 15, or you can do if you don't have a large mat, you can fold it in half, use the rolly to make a crease. You could put a pin in there. Let's see if the crease worked. Yep, I can see that pretty well. You can do the same thing with your pocket. Find the center of your pocket. I think this time I'm going to use a pin. And I'd like to have the pocket at the bottom of the quilt. I do need a 1/2 inch room for the seam. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball it right there. That looks good. I'm going to use a couple pins to pin it into place. And again, you have your opening here where we flipped the pocket. And when I attach the pocket, I'm going to sew it down and hopefully it will close up that gap. So I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew a 1/2 inch all the way around, of course, not the top. I think I said I was going to do a 1/2 inch around here, but it's actually my regular presser foot, which is about 3/8 of an inch. So I wanted to mention that. And I am going to pull my bobbin thread up because we don't want the messiness of the bobbin thread on the front of our quilt. And here we go. I have my pocket attached, remove my pin, and now here's my beginning threads that I'm just going to bury. So I'm going to tie them in a knot. Place the knot. It's about a 1/2 inch away from the quilt, and this is my self-threading needle. Put the threads in there. Just gonna put it through the fabric, and I just want to make sure that the thread's not coming on the other side. I'm gonna pull the knot through, give it a tug. The Quillow's almost completed. The only remaining thing to do is the binding, and I'm going to do that in a separate video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.